Dongle DACs are everywhere, almost as ubiquitous as IEMs. You can find super cheap models and others costing several hundreds of dollars. Heck, there's even an R2R dongle DAC. Your choices are increasing every single year. Audirect makes a couple of dongle DACs. I've already reviewed their Atom 2, which I thought was a very good product. Shenzhen Audio sent me Audirect's newest dongle DAC, the Beam 3 Pro. Shenzhen Audio is among a few online retailers that specializes in hi-fi audio gear. They carry the full assortment of DACs, amps, cables, adapters, DAPs, headphones, IEMs, and accessories. From the usual to the odd to the downright out of left field. If you're in the mood to spend money, take a look at Shenzhen Audio. They have competitive prices and great customer service. The Beam 3 Pro is $150. Is it pitch perfect or white noise? There are actually two versions of the Beam 3. There's a cheaper Beam 3S, which retails for around $100. The Pro sells for $150. From what I can tell, the two versions have MQA support, both convert PCM up to 32-bit at 768 kHz and DSD-512, both have independent dual amplification circuitry, both have selectable gain, and both seem to be the same size. But there are a few differences. The 3S has 4.4mm balanced output. The Pro has only 3.5mm output. And the Pro uses the ES9281 Pro DAC versus the stock ES9281 on the 3S. The maximum power output for the Pro is clearly listed at different impedances. I assume these are at high gain. You'll get 115 milliwatts at 16 ohms, 150 at 32 ohms, and 13 milliwatts at 600 ohms. The 3S has greater power output. There you'll get 88 milliwatts at 16 ohms, 190 milliwatts at 32 ohms, and 27 milliwatts at 600 ohms. Reading the specs alone, you would think that the 3S would be more expensive since it seems to have the same functionality as the Pro and yet has greater power output at the higher impedances. I was a little stymied by this myself. I read listings from various retailers selling both products and I could not find any more clarity regarding what makes the Pro different from the 3S. It appears that the Pro has a dual-stage amplification while the 3S does not. While both DACs should drive large, high-impedance headphones, the Pro's marketing emphasizes this feature while the 3S's doesn't. Ultimately, there's a good set of features with the Pro, but I'm a little confused how the Pro has any material differences from the cheaper 3S. And the Pro's manual does not shed light on this either. As for build, the Pro is a solid product. It's a bit heavy for something this size, but I'm not counting that as a negative. The Pro has USB-C connection with replaceable cables. There is also a single button on the side. This controls the gain options. Connecting to my Mac, iPhone, LG V30, and PC were always a breeze. It's plug and play, no drivers needed. Overall, the features are a little bit confusing. I don't understand what separates the 3S from the Pro. On the other hand, the Pro has a solid build and hassle-free connection. The Beam 3 Pro is another dongle DAC in the bloated dongle DAC market. A few years ago, we didn't have as many options as we do now. While it's great to have lots of choices, it's also a little difficult to figure out which of the multitude of possibilities is the right one for any given person. You can compare specifications easily. If you want lots of power output, you can filter your search results. If you want MQA, you can filter for that. But if you just want a portable device and are not married to a specific feature, what's the best option? I don't think there's such a thing as the best. There's only that which works for you. So, because I don't like hyping products and I won't pretend previously released gear is now non-existent just because a new item is in the market, we are going to do some head-to-head comparisons. Here, let's compare the Pro against the EcoZerta ITM03, the Low2Pa S1, the AudioQuest Dragonfly Cobalt, and the Earman TR amp. I conducted A/B tests. Each device was plugged into the same PC. I send signal to each comparative device and to the Pro at once through Voicemeeter Banana. I used a passive A/B switch connecting the 3.5mm outputs. I volume matched through voice meter and listened using the Sennheiser HD6XX, Allo Audio S4X, NAD HP50, and the Moondrop Quarks. I used my test playlist on Amazon Music HD and Qobuz. The basic idea was to figure out if there are any audible differences among the comparative products versus the Beam 3 Pro. While we're at it, we might as well put the Audirect dual amplification to the test. On the PAW S1, I didn't use any of its EQ filters. It'll be the stock configuration for that. The Cobalt has a purported USB filter, but that does absolutely nothing, so it won't be a factor in these tests. With all the preamble out of the way, let's get to the results. I compared the Zerta, PAW S1, and the Cobalt against the Beam 3 Pro for several days. I kept going back and forth trying to hear for any audible differences. The Cobalt, Zerta, and Beam 3 Pro do not have physical volume controls. Their volume is adjusted through Windows or Mac. I volume matched them through voice meter. On high gain, it was patently obvious that the Beam 3 Pro was noticeably louder than the Cobalt and the Zerta. Once volume matched, I found a couple of things. First, all three products sounded the same. Switching from one device to the other made no significant immediate difference. On some occasions, I thought that perhaps the Zerta might have ever so slightly smoother vocal rendition, but that was very likely imperfect volume matching. Despite my best efforts, I cannot rule out that possibility. Even if the volumes were perfectly matched, whatever differences I heard on the Zerta were frankly negligible. In my opinion, the Cobalt was not clearer or had any better sound quality than the Zerta or the Beam 3 Pro. Forced into a blind test, I would wager you couldn't tell either. When I turned to the TR amp, there was a difference. The TR amp sounds harsher and always has to me. There seems to be less mid-bass emphasis and slightly greater treble emphasis on the TR amp. Vocals generally sounded a little harsher on the TR amp. Again, this could be attributed to imperfect volume matching, but this is the exact same experience I have had with the TR amp whenever I have compared it. When it comes down to it, the Beam 3 Pro sounds indistinguishable from the Eco Zerta, Low2 PAW S1, and the Dragonfly Cobalt. There is a noticeable difference between the Beam 3 Pro and the TR amp, at least to me. Let's briefly discuss the power output. Audirect says you'll get 150 milliwatts at 32 ohms. I don't know if that's true, but I can say that none of my test headphones were a challenge for this device. The 300 ohms HD6XX ran perfectly fine on the Beam 3 Pro. The LCD1 needs amplification despite its low impedance, and the Beam easily provided plenty of juice. I even tested my 600 ohm Beyerdynamic T1 2nd Gen. Audirect says we should get about 13 milliwatts at that impedance. The T1 did get loud enough for me, but I think it lacked clarity through the Beam 3 Pro. With around 100 milliwatts, the T1 seems to operate at peak performance. Forget about using large planar headphones like the LCD2, Aventone Planar, or the like. In my experience, these types of headphones need around 250 milliwatts for peak performance. And, of course, don't even dream about the Beam 3 Pro powering the Mounthouse Argons, because those headphones need about 1 watt. Truth be told, it's not like any of my test headphones struggled on the Low2 PAW S1, Cobalt, or Zerta. All those headphones I used performed at peak on the dongle DACs across the board. And of course the TR amp is much more powerful, so it wasn't even a contest in that regard. Overall, the Beam 3 Pro appears to have a neutral sound signature. It is practically indistinguishable from the PAW S1 without its EQ, the Dragonfly Cobalt, and the Eco Zerta ITM03. Dongle DACs are easy to find. You can spend as little or as much as you want. Some people advocate for using only the Apple Audio dongle, and while that's fine, it's also limited to Apple devices, obviously. You could spend a lot of money on the recent THX Onyx or the Aston Current USB DAC and get yourself products that have limited features. I have tested a few of Audirect's products, and I've found them to be of good quality and good price to performance delivered. Here, I compared the Beam 3 Pro against the PAW S1, the Zerta ITM03, the Cobalt, and the TR amp. All of these products have something different to offer. The PAW S1 has over a dozen EQ options plus balanced output. The Zerta has an optical output if you need it. The TR amp is a powerful portable amp DAC. And the Cobalt is, well, it's an AudioQuest product. It's perfectly capable. The Beam 3 Pro offers high-resolution audio support, MQA compliance, and sturdy build and portability. You'll get 3 levels of gain. But beyond that, there isn't much else to hang your hat on. This brings us to value. I'm frankly really confused why the Beam 3 Pro exists. I don't understand why this thing costs $150. I didn't find anything about its performance jaw-dropping or exemplary or unique. There's some weirdness with the marketing, and I just couldn't decipher what the hell Audirect was saying. For example, they claim that the Beam 3 Pro supports multiple OS. My first impression was that Audirect has firmware you could install to ostensibly adjust the sound, but that's not the case. All Audirect means is that the Beam can be used with Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS, like many, 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 many other dongle DACs. Then there's the weird gaming mode the company touts. I thought this was a unique game-centered feature. There's nothing else in the marketing to explain how to activate it, and the manual doesn't even mention it. I've decided it means nothing. The gaming mode logo in the marketing material seems like the Nintendo Switch logo, and so I suppose Audirect means that the Beam is compatible with devices like the Switch. Whoop-de-doo. Or how about the anti-glare glass as a feature under the brand new technology header in the marketing? Guys, I'm not convinced that anti-glare glass is brand new technology, nor is it a feature. And then, when you compare the Beam 3 Pro against the Beam 3S, you will struggle to figure out what the differences are. They seem to be exactly the same enclosure, except the 3S has a balanced 4.4mm output and uses the stock ES9281 and not the ES9281 Pro that's in the Beam 3 Pro. Otherwise, the two devices have the same feature sets. Oh, well, that's not true. There is one major difference. The Beam 3S has greater amplification at 32 and 600 ohm impedances. The 3S is $50 cheaper than the Pro. When I consider everything here, the comparisons against the 4 alternatives and specifications for the 3S, I can easily reach my conclusion. My answer to the value judgment about the Beam 3 Pro is a resounding hell no. What exactly are you paying $100 for? The features that arguably make the Beam 3 Pro stand apart from the Zerta, Cobalt, PAW S1 are essentially the same as on the $100 Beam 3S. Look, I think the Beam 3 Pro is a very good device. It performs flawlessly. But the 3S clearly is a better bargain in comparison. If the 3S did not exist, I think my conclusion would be more positive towards the Pro. But I'm not the one who decided to release two products that do the same thing at different price points. Audirect made that incredibly weird decision. So here's my bottom line. If you like the Beam 3 Pro and you want it despite what you've heard here, then go right ahead. It's a good product. But if you are more budget conscious, I recommend the cheaper Beam 3S. I haven't touched that device, but I find it really hard to believe you're getting less just because you will be saving $50 if you buy that over the Pro. Hell, you could buy the 3S and a 4.4mm to 3.5mm adapter and still pay less than the Beam 3 Pro. And if you like the Beam products, then that's what I suggest you do. Skip the 3 Pro. Whichever you choose to buy, swing by Shenzhen Audio. The more products they feel comfortable sending me to review, the better. I'm not going to sugarcoat product performance, but I can promote a retailer that has stuck with me despite my critical nature. Hats off to Shenzhen Audio for not yet dumping me.